Are your kitchen and bathroom way overdue for a remodel? Well, I got the guy for you. Call John Sellers at First Response Contracting, 484-256-7136. Both residential and commercial services, and he's licensed and insured. Call him at 484-256-7136. First Response Contracting.
When you're looking at the price of gold, what you're watching is not gold going up. Gold's not more valuable today than it was yesterday or 10 years ago or 50 years ago.
It's the others going down.
The dollar's going down. Currencies are going down against it because...
From real estate to real life and everything in between, The Brad Weisman Show. And now, your host, Brad Weisman.
All right, we're back for another show, and I am super, super into this show. You know, at first, when I got this request to be a guest, I was like, I don't know. Is this something that that is going to be really interesting? And then I really started reading into it. And it was also something I'm thinking, you know, I'm really curious about this. So if I'm curious about it, I would think my audience is going to be curious about this. So what we're going to talk about today is gold and silver. I know it sounds a little different than what we normally talk about, but we're going to talk about gold and silver, any kind of precious metals. I've always had this thing of like, okay, it's not people like me that buy precious metals, gold, silver, things like that. It's somebody else. And you hear about commercials about how the value of gold is the best, or the having gold is the best, you know. Well, we have a, I'm going to say expert. We have an expert today. His name is Tony Arterburn, and he is going to join us right now. Tony, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. You're the silver gold guy or gold silver guy. I mean, that's pretty much what I've heard.
Well, I'll take it. Happy to be in that business. I'm pretty lucky here with all these historical shifts. I've just always been interested in history and coins and things that I found, you know, during the military and experiences that I had being in Iraq and some of the first army units into Iraq and the last tail end of the invasion. And they sent us to the bank, and they said, go to the bank and provide security. So we go over there, and people are running out of the bank with these giant boxes of Iraqi dinar, and the bank tellers and everybody's just watching because there was no police and the government had collapsed, you know, and, but nobody wanted them. So I thought, well, this is odd. So people were trying to withdraw their funds, and it was clear that the currency had went to zero because it had Saddam Hussein's picture on them.
Oh my God.
But what they would take in the streets, and I tell this story often, but people ask me, what's the greatest entrepreneur you ever met? I was like, an 8-year-old Iraqi kid who sold me a Pepsi in May of 2003. It came out of nowhere, had a cold bottle of Pepsi. I looked around. I mean, stuff's on fire. And this kid is the courage of this kid and his entrepreneur spirit. And I didn't give him an Iraqi dinar. I gave him US dollars. And so you fast forward all these many years, now it's illegal to trade with dollars in Iraq. And that's what's happening to our world. So that was the currency of choice when the currency collapsed there in Iraq. Now they replaced it. They have an Iraqi dinar. But you can see how paper goes to zero. That really got me thinking at that time. Yeah. And I've always been interested in history, and my family has history in banking. You know, my dad chartered a bank in the 80s when he's in his 20s and built it. And I got to see him do that. And I also got to see what happens with regulation and what happens when giant, big mega corporations don't like decentralized things. That happened. I don't know if you know about Texas banking, but no. Texas only used to have banks that were, there was no national banks. You couldn't, under the Texas Constitution, you couldn't have Wells Fargo. There was no Chase. There was no.
Interesting.
Right,
it was all state.
It had to be a bank that and you could, every bank had to have its own president. And you can only have so many charters per person. So like you couldn't have a multi-chain thing. So, I mean, a little bit of conspiracy. Basically, they pressured all these banks and then brought in the nationals back in the 80s. So I got to watch that. So it's always been in my wheelhouse. And now we're in this weird part of history. I feel bad for a lot of the folks who don't know this.
Yeah.
So that's why I do what I do. I go out and just, try to make it as condensed as possible. Like, hey, what's happening to our currency? What's happening to our money?
Well, and everything was back. I mean, the whole reason we have it used to be called a silver certificate, right? Isn't that what the dollar bill was called years ago when they decided that it was a pain in the butt, I guess, to have these coins or silver or gold and going back and forth. And my grandfather telling me, because it used to actually say silver certificate on there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, always, redeemable in silver. And that's something that JFK pushed. he was the last president to do that, putting the Federal Reserve on notice and putting notes directly from the Treasury. You could turn those in for silver. But yeah, we used to have a bimetallic standard in this country. So like in the 19th century, you had so many ounces of silver made an ounce of gold. So they set it at 16 to 1. And so the silver dollars were 0.735 ounces of silver. And then the gold coins were 0.9675 ounces of gold. So you'd have this ratio that lasted until 1933. So a lot of people don't understand is that in the 19th century, so from the time the country was founded, up until 1913, there was no such thing as inflation. If you went to George Washington's inaugural and you bought a pair of clothes, that pair of clothes cost the same in 1902. Wow. Because there was no inflation. Inflation is really just criminal activity. That's all that is. It's just it's
printing money. It's printing what we don't have backed, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like when you have a government that says, well, we want to expand the money supply. We have to increase the welfare or warfare state. We have to increase our bloated budgets. Like, how do we do that? At first, they start just by debasing things. Like you go back to the 1960s and, after JFK was assassinated, that he was the last president to be on a silver $50, which is ironic. And I always thought was a message because he wanted to keep silver in the coinage. So the powers that be, though, wanted the silver out of it because they needed to increase the money supply. So they did. They debased our currency, and the world took notice back in the 60s. And, people like President de Gaulle of France sent his warships over to pick up the gold because they're like, hey, we have these dollars. It's $35 an ounce for gold. We're picking up our gold because you guys are over here debasing we can see that you're increasing your money supply because you took the silver out of your coinage. What else have you done to your paper dollar? And of course, by August 1971, Nixon takes us off the gold standard because we didn't have the gold. I mean, you
have to have to back it up, right? Don't you have to have, if you have $1 trillion out there in cash or notes, don't you have to have $1 trillion worth of gold to back that up?
Well, that's the way it used to be. And that's why we would have never reached those kind of numbers. Like, it took us 200 years to go $1 trillion in debt. And that was right around the time I was born, end of 79, going into 80. With the Reagan era, we hit $1 trillion in the national debt. Well, now we hit $1 trillion in the national debt every 90 days.
It's just, it's
the
amazing.
reason is because they've completely decoupled our currency from sanity, reason, logic, value. It's now just completely fake and run by, a cartel. And that's what it is. I mean, you can dress it up all you want with these fancy financial guys on these networks, but at the end of the day, it's just counterfeiting. I mean, it's printing currency out of thin air to cover their bloated budgets, which they're never going to rein in. So if you know that, why would you save that currency?
Yeah.
If you know that it's going to buy less next year. And the problem with all of us, I think, and I'm included in this, is we have normalcy bias because we got to live through a period of relative calm even while the budgets grew and grew and grew through the 80s and 90s, and gold and silver were flat. The markets were doing pretty good. But now we just reached the tipping point. So you've got, 130% of debt to gross domestic product ratio. It's unsustainable. You got $350 trillion of debt worldwide. Supposedly there's $400 trillion in assets. I beg to differ. I don't agree with that number. The reason I don't agree with that number is because gold supposedly only has a $16 trillion market cap in the face of $400 trillion in so-called wealth around the world. I don't buy any of these numbers. So I think the future is going to consist of just more and more currency printing and debasement. And this is literally an experiment.
So where does it go? I mean, they keep saying that we can't keep doing this, but I've been hearing, I'm 54 years old. So I was born in 1970, and I've been hearing probably since Reagan or a little bit after that, from what I remember, or when I started to actually give a rip. I remember hearing that we can't keep spending like this. We can't keep spending like this. We can't keep spending like this. But yet neither party, we don't like to get into too much of any kind of side of politics on here, but neither party wants to seem to fix the problem.
Well, they can't. They've promised their interests that put them both in power that they're going to continue, whether it's the welfare warfare state. If you want to have an open border with no checks and invite the world. If you want to invite the world, you got to have a free floating fiat currency, because you can't have a budget. Yeah. If you want to invade the world because you're on the other side, you want to bomb countries to bring democracy or whatever whatever psychopathic idea these war hawks do.
Yeah.
If you do that, then, you got to have a free floating fiat currency. There's a reason America really didn't have, the kickoff to, its empire didn't really start until we decoupled from gold. And that's when everything accelerated, unfortunately. And it bolsters things like, if you've heard the term deep state, I think that's beyond party. There's an entrenched ruling bureaucracy. We can all see that now. Well, they're funded by fake money. It's what they traffic in. So
it's amazing.
I like what I do because it sheds a light on that, and it kind of gets people to think about what money is.
Yeah.
It's not what currency and money are different.
Well, and that's what I want to get to. So I want you to, I saw this example today, actually, when I was researching you a little bit, and you had said about the currency and money being two different things. That really blew my mind. So if you want to just kind of go into that a little bit too, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I'll try to explain this, and this is something that's my wheelhouse. I think about it all the time. So if you have money, just randomly, this is a British sovereign. This is a gold British coin sovereign from 1848. I was just looking at it. Somebody sold it to us earlier in the shop. So this is money. And the reason this is money is because this has inherent value in and of itself. It represents energy. It represents work. You had to get this out of the ground. You had to refine it. You had to coin it. It exists in the third dimension, which doesn't necessarily have to, because we can talk about Bitcoin. But this represents finite. It represents it's in short supply. It's precious, or you can call it precious metals, right?
Yeah.
So money has to have some kind of intrinsic value. The Romans, they also use gold and silver, but they use salt. Salt was in short supply in the ancient world. That's why you get the term salary when you get paid. It's so salt is really, there was the Nubians.
Oh, that's interesting.
Tons of gold for the salt. They were like, hey, we got all this gold. Do you want to give us the salt?
So salary from saline? Is that
right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. That's where
amazing.
that's where you get the term salary.
Amazing.
So yeah, there's so much there. Like, it has to be finite.
Yeah.
It has to be a resource. So when you have something like the dollar, like, what's the number of dollars? Like the answer is more. The answer is infinite. It's as many dollars, and they're gonna test
paper.
This theory. Well, yeah, and we throw around these numbers like, we just get another trillion.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, how just insane that number is. Do you know? I'll give you an example. Do you know how long ago a trillion seconds in time? Like how long ago was a trillion seconds? Do you have a wild guess?
I can't even imagine, but I know every time I hear any kind of definition of a trillion, it blows your mind.
It's 32,000 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's 32. A billion seconds is 32 years ago. So a billion, right? A trillion is 1,000 billion. So it's 32,000 years ago was a trillion seconds. And we just throw it around. It's just keys. They code it in. And the problem with that is that, when you finally realize that they've debased it, then it becomes something else. Oh, it's just inflation. Look at them raising prices and all this other stuff. No. That's not natural. That's not something. Actually, prices should be continually lowering, folks. It should be deflation. The reason being is because innovation and breakthroughs and things, the free market should make things cheaper. We don't have that. We have socialism for the rich and free enterprise for the poor, as Gore Vidal said. So I just like to get people to understand that when now currency and money, okay, you can have a currency that is money. Okay. We just don't anymore.
Right, because we just use the paper. We don't use the gold really anymore, or the actual money part. Like
gold and silver in some states in the U.S. are legal tender, like Arkansas. Oklahoma has just passed laws recently on cryptocurrency. That's I think it's a great step forward. So you can have. That's the definition of, currency and money being together, as long as there's inherent value.
Well, see, that's the thing that when you said earlier, before we actually went live here, you're telling me that you actually are okay with Bitcoin. So that is not a three-dimensional thing. It's not something that I dug out of the ground. So how do you explain that part then?
Well, Bitcoin is a resource because I don't know how much gold exists in the world. There's
a finite amount.
Right. But you could hit, an ocean. Yeah, there's a finite amount for sure. Yeah. And it is hard to get. There's 151,000 tons of gold that have ever been mined in the history of the world. Okay. So that's by the way, it's an estimate.
Yeah.
That's since the
I get it.
Recorded history. There's more steel poured in 1 hour on this planet than all the gold that's ever been mined in all of history. Okay.
That's amazing.
It's a small amount. It's not that much. Right. So gold being, and that's the one thing that gold and silver can do that Bitcoin can't. It can exist, and I can hold this in my hand, right?
Which I like that. I like that part.
I do too. But I will say something about Bitcoin that it makes it, if it did exist in the real world, it'd be the perfect money. It's really close, but it is finite. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist. You can't make more of them. You can't just like, oh, we have to, like they do with stocks all the time, or
splitting and stuff like that. Yeah.
And like, you can't do it. The code won't let you. And by the way, millions of those are lost forever. So really there's only
I've heard 16. that like if once it's gone, they're gone. Like if you lose them,
like if you don't have the keys in the wallet, like if you lost the keys to your code, like you're never getting that back. That's the way it was built into the system. Wow. I had some of the first Bitcoin ATMs, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew when I saw that in 2016, I'm like, that, because, and I'd read about it in Reason magazine years before, but I was like, there's something to this. That's really cool. So I got to learn a lot about Bitcoin, and I buy Bitcoin every single day. And we're about to do something here with my business in Bitcoin. It's going to be really interesting. It's not my primary thing, but I do think Bitcoin has an important story to tell. And it's a great gateway for people to learn about our current system. I went to the Bitcoin conference in Nashville this past summer, and there's just so many young people and like people getting it, like, oh, they're talking about the Fed, they're talking about money printing, they're talking about fiat currency. And this is wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good education base.
It's great because once you learn that, then you're like, oh, all this other stuff is scammy. Then these people, like the world's ruling class, though, they're not that smart. They just have a printing press. I mean, it's that they're not geniuses like the World Economic Forum or any of these clowns. They're just people with a lot of wealth, and that the wealth continues to build because they do things that, the educational system tells the average person to do the opposite of what would make them wealthy, unfortunately. Yeah. And that's on purpose, in my opinion.
Yeah. So let's get into of course, it is on purpose. They like to keep us dumb. Yeah. So moving forward, let's go into, now you have a company, it's called Wolf Gold and Silver, or Silver and Gold, whatever. What I think is interesting, you make it possible for pretty much anybody to start investing in gold or in precious metals. Sure.
Yeah, that's a mission of mine. I bought my first gold coin right before I deployed to Iraq, and I think I was 22. It was my third foreign war. I just had a little bit of cash. I'd gotten married, the world was pretty much.
And then your cash went away. Once you get married, you have no cash. That's it. It's over.
Well, that was true. I was like gifts, like I'm like, hey, we'll put that in gold, So I was being a responsible young man at 22. So funny looking back. So I listened to a lot of talk radio, and I always wanted to be in broadcast. I listened to people like Michael Savage, and they talk about gold. And so I go, I'm going to go buy some gold. Well, gold was like $300 an ounce. Wow. But I called one of these people at these 1-800 numbers, and this guy put me in some I didn't know what I was doing. I had a couple. By the way, when I told him I had $2,000, he just goes, they don't care that you have $2,000. That is not that's not the reason they run those ads. Okay. The difference is, I would have told me, had I been I would have told me when I put me in gold bullion, right? I'd have done the $300 an ounce. I would have been way up when I needed to sell it, 8 years later. When in an emergency, I'd have been way up. It'd have been a great savings account. And I would have taught myself something. So I became eventually when I started Wise Wolf, I just did something different. We started with we have 2 physical locations, but I do a lot of media. So I work with people nationwide. It's really about educating folks. Yeah. And I started a program called Wolf Pack. So we have Wise Wolf Gold and Silver, and then we have the Wolf Pack, which is a monthly membership. It starts as low as $50 a month. So people say, well, I can't afford precious metals. Yeah, you can. You go to wolfpack.gold and you can go check out stuff there. And the reason I did that, I turned the whole model on its head. Yeah. And we take it doesn't matter if you have $50 or $5,000. I'm going to treat you the same. And we have a great team. We pack everything. Like if you go on and join, I send you physical precious metals to your house, a detailed invoice. I even do a comparison to what you would have paid had you just done that with that $50 and going to somewhere else. But it goes all the way up, like it jumps around. It just intervals from
I saw it. It's pretty cool. You just kind of pick the package you want or the what you want to do. I think I'm gonna start doing it just because it was very intriguing to me, and I'm like sitting here going, this is neat. So you have a bunch of customers then doing this now on a monthly basis. They're getting
1,300 people.
That's incredible.
Across the country, which is just from podcasting. I mean, I really don't even advertise, but most people, when they join, they upgrade. They don't cancel. And I have 900 plus 5-star reviews. I have almost no negative reviews.
Yeah.
We, in the lower tiers, like in the $50 one, we put gold backs, which are the 24 karat notes, because gold's so expensive, I can't fractionalize it low enough to get it into one of these like $100 packages anymore.
Right.
You have to get to the 250 and up to get gold now.
Amazing.
But we our people are our customers, our clients, really there's family. I mean, we know everybody that they love the packages, and if they need anything, a lot of times we'll just replace them. Like if something happens in the shipping, and that's just the kind of business that I run in the face of, we're not the biggest and we're never going to be. I don't want to be that, but I do enjoy what I do. And education is it's a cornerstone of what we do. Weisman.
So it's like a movement more than anything. I mean, it's a movement of calling. It's a call, which is great, and I could tell that. And because you actually you're very good at explaining and very good at helping people understand, which is great. So there was some couple of questions that you had on your package that you sent out. So what are the most significant threats to financial security today? Like, when does this break? When do we get to a point where the dollar bill is completely useless? I mean, and then all of a sudden we are trading in gold or silver again. Is that where you think it will go, or will we get a handle on this at some point?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, I want to take a second and thank Comfort Pro. Since 2001, Comfort Pro has been helping customers stay comfortable where they live, work, and play. They have 24/7 emergency service and a 100% customer satisfaction guarantee. If you need help with your heating and air conditioning or indoor air quality, call Comfort Pro at 484-917-1803. Mention the show and receive a free humidifier with the installation of a complete system.
Well, I don't think the dollar's going to zero. I think the dollar's going to digital. I think the era of the dollar being the world's reserve currency, I think they're doing a controlled demolition of that. And I have ample evidence to show that the powers that be want it to fail.
So global currency.
Right. Since 1944 at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, we had the new financial world order set up there. That's where you get the IMF and the World Bank. Gold was pegged $35 an ounce, so that the dollar became the world's reserve currency, supplanting the British pound sterling. And so all these banks around the world were stocked with dollars, and they traded in dollars. And that's what I explained earlier when we started debasing our currency in the 60s and did the Vietnam War and the space race and everything else. And Nixon knew there wasn't any gold, so they had to figure out something else to do. There was a run on our reserves, so they took it off the gold standard. Well, that lasted, for a period of decades, right? But until what's recently happened, where you get the weaponization of the dollar, even countries went along with us. We're like, well, I guess, they don't have the gold standard anymore, but there's nobody better. Well, you still use the dollar. Yeah. And we had the petrodollar. That's where in 1974, that's where Kissinger and Nixon pegged the dollar to exchanged in crude oil. So the House of Saud said, look, they did a deal. We protect them. They only denominate crude and OPEC in dollars. Something really weird happened, though, in the last 4 or 5 months. That 50-year agreement was just allowed to lapse. We didn't do anything. And that's almost the entire like everything that's held up the dollar is the usage. It's called money velocity. Yeah. So we've gone around the world sanctioning people. We have 40 different sanctions on 36 different countries. We're saying use our system or else. Well, these countries, the BRICS, you've heard of this. You heard of BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. That just added Saudi Arabia. They have 25 other nations in the periphery. It's like 60% of the world's population. They said, okay, then we just won't use it. Wow. And so this is what the term de-dollarization is. And it's happening so fast. When you're looking at the price of gold, here's something for your audience. When you're looking at the price of gold, what you're watching is not gold going up. Gold's not more valuable today than it was yesterday or 10 years ago or 50 years ago.
It's the others going down.
The dollar's going down. Currencies are going down against it because it has to do with demand and remonetization. So these countries like the BRICS nations, they're just hoarding up gold. They're eating up gold at record clips because they see that all of their currencies are going to be remonetized with something new with gold.
Right.
There's only one central bank not buying it. That's us. We don't buy gold. You know why?
Why?
Because we're at war with it. The Federal Reserve's at war with gold. Now, the people that own it will buy it, but I'm saying, like, if they buy it here, if they buy it in the chunks that the other central banks are buying, it'll make the price go up, and that hurts the dollar. The more the gold goes up, the more the dollar looks bad. So we're in a pretty weird fix.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, like, I'm not a doom and gloom kind of guy.
No.
Saying, well, the dollar's going to go to zero and you have to have a wheelbarrow to, like in the Weimar Republic, to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible, but I don't really think that's what's going to happen. Yeah. I think what's happening is things are decentralizing here. Like, states are getting their own gold and silver reserves. They're making gold and silver legal tender. Bitcoin's making, and cryptocurrencies making headway. I don't think like something's going to supplant the dollar. It's going to be lots of things. There's going to be like different countries using different cross-border payment. It won't be like the dollar is replaced by the Chinese yuan. Maybe a little bit, but it won't be like the dollar has been. And I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. But what I'm saying is, you have people need to watch the headlines, because this is the stuff that the financial networks don't talk about.
Yeah. And that's why this is good information. I mean, what's interesting, we had on not too long ago, we had on a lady that was an IRS agent, and she told us all the stuff in the background there, and it was really eye-opening. And this is eye-opening also when it has to do with currency and money, stuff that I wouldn't have known until hearing you talk about this. So what we should do, if you're looking into doing this, they should diversify what they're doing and buy some gold, buy some silver, and a good place to do that would be start with your system and buying it at $50 or whatever a month. So if you go to sell this, how do you sell it?
Well, gold and silver are extremely liquid, easy to sell. You just got to look around your area, find a professional gold and silver exchange,
which we have.
Sell it back to me. I mean, and we have a buyback program, always willing to pay top dollar for any metals that you bought from me, because we need them to supply my customers. So always happy to do that. But you can always move gold and silver. Just do a little bit of research. And I would say, like, I definitely don't give financial advice or anything. I give protection advice. I don't know. If I could tell, people call me all the time. They're like, well, what's going to go up? Is it going to go to this? I'm like, I don't know, but I know where the dollar's going. I don't save dollars. I try to get out of them as fast as I can because of the purchasing power issue.
So, another thing, this is the one I actually do want to, you had said about putting, you can have gold and precious metals into an IRA.
Sure. Physical gold and silver. Like, if you have an IRA right now, it's just sitting there in paper stocks, like, you can call us. We have a company that we partner with that just rolls everything over without penalty. That way you don't have it's from product to product, and you can get into physical gold and silver. We buy it from the exchange. And the way that the system works is just like having a bank account for an IRA. You have to store it at an approved vault. But when you're done, like, if you cash it out, then you get your metals. That's the difference. Like, if you go on the stock market right now and you're like, I'm going to buy some gold, and you get GLD. Well, I mean, you have a promissory note. But if you cash out, they don't send you your gold. They send you fiat currency. So, like, in this instance,
well, then that's kind of defeats the purpose. It goes back to currency. Then that's pretty interesting.
Well, the reason they say that is, like, well, you can buy into what gold's spot price is, right? Okay, and then we will honor that. So if gold goes up, or whatever against the currency, then you'll be able to cash in without actually having to get physical delivery of gold. That may work for some people, but personally, I like having the gold. And even if it's in my own depository where I can, keep it there safe, which is what the super wealthy and wealthy people in general are going to have. They're not going to keep it at their house. Not all of it anyway. You'll have some, but
that's interesting. See, I didn't know that you could have an IRA, because I have an IRA, and so I could use some of that and put it in gold instead of having it in stocks and all these other things.
Yeah, it's a really cool program. Like, it's only, I don't go any other way. And they have Bitcoin IRAs too. I don't get into that, but that is something you can do as well.
Amazing. So, we're going to be wrapping this up. So is there anything else that you wanted to cover that you like to let the public know, or let the audiences know besides the fact that you used to jump out of perfectly good planes. And the reason I say that, I have my pilot's license. So we always talk about anybody that's a paratrooper. We're always like, okay, jumping out of a plane that's working is always kind of interesting. But you were trained, and obviously you were in Iraq and everything, and I appreciate your service. So tell us a little bit about the paratrooper thing.
Oh, well, I'm privileged to be a former U.S. Army paratrooper. I had to work really hard to get my wings.
I bet.
Yeah, well, I was a competitive power lifter for many years when I was young. And, well, actually, I competed a couple of years ago. But I every once in a while, I'll dust off the old equipment and go compete again. But I was a world champion. I represented the United States, even when I was in the military at the World Championships as a young man in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago. But I did that, and it led to some injuries that I had, before I joined the military, and they just fought me tooth and nail. Let me go to airborne school. And I said, I got set world records. It's, I had my knee redone, and I said, I can do this. This is post, I'm still, that's a national world champion, all this stuff. So finally they let me go. I had to work really hard to get my airborne wings. So whenever I put my sport coat on, I always keep my wings on my lapel.
That's
Plus,
awesome.
I got to be an elite unit. So
How many times you jump? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. No.
A lot of times people will actually, because I know they'll actually know whatever. I didn't know if you guys keep count or not, but
I should have. But my goal was always to jump something interesting. Like I would go with, I'd just show up with the Green Berets. They would jump out of the little aircraft, the CASA airplanes, the CASAs, and they would walk out the back of them. So I'd show up with the special warfare guys and go, hey, can I get in this chalk? And they would let me in. I'd get my jump in for the quarter or whatever. I jump out of a Chinook or a Black Hawk. I think we jumped out of Chinooks in Kosovo. We did and
we're talking low. You're talking low altitude jumping then, right? Because out of a
Chinook was like 1,500 feet. Lower,
oh my gosh! So you're pulling this chute's coming out like immediately. I had this. I jumped with a German captain. From the German military. I got German jump wings because I got to jump with this German captain. Oh, cool.
And,
very cool.
We're walking out the back, and I was, I'm a big guy, but I'm short, I'm 5'9", but compared to this, he was a big, tall German guy.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to hit the ground before you. And he said, what? He goes, I'm going out first. And I said, I'll hit the ground before you do. And I did. And he looked over, he's like, you was right about that. I said, because it just hurts. I think we jumped that day with the, I don't know, my goodness, the terminology. I think it was a T-11 parachute. It was the ones that you could use and steer, but that's not usually what you get in the Army. They give you it hasn't changed much since
they still just have the round ones that they come down in the.
And you have to take the harness and pull it into yourself so you can catch the wind or go against the wind.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's old school there, man. That's not like the new ones they have.
It's not like the steering. So that's like the Cadillac. No, that's. Jumping out of aircraft in the military is not fun time. You better be ready or you're going to break yourself.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Unbelievable. So I'll tell you, was there anything else? Because we're going to have to wrap this up. Is there anything else you want to put out there?
I would just tell people to continue this dialogue with themselves. Go and look up. You can find my podcast, The Wise Wolf Golden Crypto Show, or the Arterburn Radio Transmission. My website is Arterburn.gold, my last name .gold. Go check that. It has tons of stuff there. We just redid the website, and company is Wise Wolf. So
the websites look great too. I was on them today and checking everything out. If you want to go see him, like you said, you can just go to the Wise Wolf Gold, or you can go to. He's also on Instagram at Wolfpack Gold Silver, and also at Paratrooper. I like that. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Very cool. So thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate it. We'll see you soon. All right, there you have it. Tony Arterburn. That was an amazing podcast. I learned so much there, about gold and silver. I would definitely check out his websites. I think you're going to learn something. I think it's going to be valuable, and there's some good stuff on there. So check it out, and we'll see you soon. Every Thursday, 7 p.m. All right, thank you. Hey guys, I want to take a second to thank Comfort Pro. Since 2001, Comfort Pro has been helping customers stay comfortable where they live, work, and play. They stand behind their work with a 100% customer satisfaction guarantee. They have 24/7 emergency service And if you mention the show, you receive a free Watchdog maintenance plan for 1 year. Call Comfort Pro at 484-917-1803. 484-917-1803. That's Comfort Pro.